Let our service begin.
Each April, the Green Sanctuary Committee brings to this congregation a Sunday service to celebrate Earth Day, which over the years has become Earth Month. A time for paying particular attention to our deep connectedness to this beautiful world we live in. For this year's Earth Day service, Darcy Dumont, a climate activist and one of our own Green Sanctuary members, will be our guest speaker. Darcy is a retired teacher and lawyer who moved to Amherst in 1995. She was a leader in the campaign to divest the Massachusetts Pension Fund from fossil fuels, and she has served on the Climate Action Now Steering Committee and Legislative Work Group. In 2018, Darcy was elected to the Amherst Town Council, representing District 5. While on the council, she sponsored legislation creating a town energy and climate action committee, and she served on that committee as it established a climate action, adaptation, and resilience plan. Most recently, she is co-founder of Zero Waste Amherst. We're delighted that she will share with us some of her insights into how we can think globally but act locally in our concerns for the environment. And now, Steve Rice will light our chalice.
Our chalice lighting this morning is from A Fire in the Universe by Sean Trapp. Our chalice reminds us that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It is our reminder that all is connected, even though the space of the void is vast, and our experience here is but a blip in the cosmic timeline. This flame is our promise that our smallness, or our short time on this earth, that we live intently and deeply with love for one another, with honesty and integrity, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and with a sense of shared responsibility. For, as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminded us, this pale blue dot is the only home we ever known. I light this chalice for the seventh principle, respect for the interdependent existence for which we all are all a part.
Hello, I'm Jeff Clark from the Green Sanctuary Committee, and I have a reading from Rainier Maria Rilke, his work, Do We Know Elegy, as translated by Joanna Macy from its German into English. Earth, isn't this what you want? To arise in us invisible? Is it not your dream to enter us so wholly? There is nothing left outside us to see. What if not transformation is your deepest purpose? Earth, my love, I want that too. Believe me. No more of your springtimes are needed to win me over. Even one flower is more than enough. Before I was named, I belonged to you. I seek no other law but yours, and know I can trust the death you will bring. See, I live. On what? Childhood and future are equally present. Sheer abundance of being floods my heart.
Good morning. You probably heard in February about the report of the UN International Panel on Climate Change. It was pretty alarming, and most of the major news outlets briefly sounded the alarm. But like most news stories, it quickly faded from the headlines. The report stated that over 40% of the world's population, especially climate justice communities, are highly vulnerable to climate impacts, and that though many of the impacts of global warming are now simply irreversible, there's still a brief window of time to avoid the very worst. There's hope that if the rise in temperatures is kept below 1.5 degrees centigrade, it would reduce the most serious impacts. The report points out that this decade, the 2020s, is the decade of action if we're going to turn things around, and that to do so, we'll need to implement major solutions and radical actions. The message could not be more clear, but people still don't necessarily like hearing it. I know many here come to services to have community and to feel comforted. I always feel conflicted about bringing the message that involves such a stark reality. But it's hard to find a way to say that the ship will absolutely hit the iceberg unless we all act to turn it right now. The issue is urgency and shifting our consciousness so that we can accelerate and scale up our efforts to prevent the worst effects of climate change. Many countries, states, and localities have made goals to be carbon neutral by 2050. And they've made climate action plans and tinkered at implementing small, disconnected solutions. But what are the transformative solutions and scaled up radical solutions that the IPCC is talking about? I'm going to speak about that in a minute, but first want to mention how our recent retreat connects with that idea. Some of us, especially the Green Sanctuary Committee, attended a retreat 2 weeks ago with Ann Goodwin on Joanna Macy's The Work That Reconnects. The four-part framework Macy puts forward is useful. The 4 parts are finding gratitude for what we have, feeling the pain for the world and our awareness of its destruction, seeing with new eyes, and going forth as a change agent. First, we looked at finding gratitude for our interconnection. Being grateful includes acknowledging that we have enough, that we can learn to live with less. It's a subversive concept in this majority consumerist, extractive, capitalist society. Reverend Rachel mentioned this in her recent sermon on growth. The growth of the consumer culture and unfettered capitalism are causing potential environmental and financial collapse. Globalization, where we outsource manufacturing, lose those skills and the independence of making our own goods. Completely unnecessary energy consumption, transporting goods back and forth across the globe. Living larger, buying more, larger homes, 3 cars instead of 2, or 1, or none. Generally, more stuff. The thought is that we can live counter to these majority trends and still be fully grateful for what we have. The second element is feeling pain for the world and awareness of its destruction. This is the hard part. That includes the pain of forest fires, drought, floods, severe storms, melting ice caps, rising seas, clear cutting of forests, and the scariest to me, the thawing of millions of acres of permafrost, releasing trapped methane and ancient diseases. There is a long, long list. It's enough to cause serious anxiety for any sane person, but also enough to spur action. The third part of Joanna Macy's framework is gaining insight, seeing with new eyes, seeing this era from the perspective of our ancestors 200 and 300 years ago, and from the perspective of our progeny in the future. How would our progeny to be in the year 2100 advise us to act? Gaining insight involves a process of seeing how we live, not in a business as usual light, but as the new normal, the new paradigm, living more simply, sustainably, locally, We can choose to either head for the great unraveling and collapse of our society, or for the great turning. The great turning can be accomplished with a shift in consciousness and in political will. The fourth element of Joanna Macy's framework is going forth. Going forth in whatever role suits you, as an individual actor living sustainably, or as a protester, disruptor, legislator, artist, donor, or whatever. The book Drawdown provides 100 solutions any of us could take the opportunity to work on. And because there are a multitude of solutions, individuals and all types of entities can help. Everyone in, individuals, youth, businesses, institutions, governments at all levels. Don't let anyone tell you that individual action is not a critical part to play. Though large-scale action is essential, individual action can greatly add to the momentum. Now, back to the IPCC and transformative action. The IPCC was talking about the need to take action on a large scale. And we've acted on a large scale and with urgency in the past, as you all know. We moved with great urgency and collective action during World War II, in the race to the moon, and of course during the COVID-19 pandemic, to prevent far more deaths from happening. So we know we can do it given the political will. And incorporating climate justice, ensuring that all parties are at the table, heard, and have a voice in decision-making, has to be done on a parallel track as we move forward. So what are examples of large-scale accelerated action? Some of this will be done by passing federal and state laws to move us rapidly away from a fossil fuel economy. But how about large-scale actions that are happening or are being considered now, right here in the Valley? There are 3 exciting examples that I'm going to tell you about. 1, building decarbonization. One of the top sources of our greenhouse emissions is from buildings. So how do we quickly decarbonize them? Some of you attended a presentation by local energy advocates on March 15th from the movers and shakers from Ithaca, New York, about Ithaca's Green New Deal and their program to provide energy efficiency and electrification to all 6,000 buildings in their city. They hired a Crackerjack sustainability director and have contracted with Block Power, a Black-owned and led company, to be program manager. By electrifying buildings, Ithaca means they'll be taking out the fossil fuel heating, the HVAC systems, hot water systems, gas stoves, gas dryers, and replacing them with electric versions, providing solar panels and EV charging and more. But you may ask, who pays for this? As for financing the program, rather than counting on state-sponsored incentive programs, which tend to be small and bogged down with bureaucratic delay, or taxpayer funds, Ithaca is looking to private equity. $100 million has already been committed and an additional $500 million pledged. Obtaining financing from private equity greatly affects the scale of the action that can be undertaken, including the ability to do the upfront bulk purchasing necessary. So local groups are looking at how the Ithaca model could be replicated here in the Valley. Super exciting. Number 2, community choice energy in California and here. Clearly, if we're electrifying buildings, the hope is that in parallel, we'll scale up decarbonizing the electric grid. And how can we do that? Another amazing move forward has been the upcoming application for a joint intermunicipal energy aggregation among Amherst, Northampton, and Pelham, which is going to be called Valley Green Alliance. It'll provide a means to stabilize electric rates and accelerate the amount of renewable energy we have in our energy mix. You may not have heard of community choice aggregation, and hopefully your eyes are not glazing over right now, but local CCA programs are very big across California. Through CCA, communities can bulk purchase electricity on behalf of residents and businesses in place of investor-owned utilities. Over the last decade, local governments in more than 200 towns and cities serving more than 11 million customers throughout California have chosen to participate in CCA to accelerate the greening of the grid. Municipalities on virtually the entire coast of California get their energy by way of CCAs. So we have great hope for our CCA. We also have a partner organization that has been created on which I'm a board member called Local Energy Advocates of Western Mass, which hopes to support the CCA by providing project ideas and fundraising. Third project is scaling up trash reduction by universal compost collection and processing. Our landfills and incinerators create horrendous disease-causing toxic pollution of air, water, and soil, not to mention their methane emissions, both of which especially impact climate justice communities. National haulers, I think you've noticed, have recently dominated the scene by buying up our local haulers, automating their services, and de-emphasizing waste reduction, since it's not profitable for them to reduce waste. California is on the forefront of waste reduction too. As of January, it passed a state law banning organics in the waste stream, which applies to everyone. And Washington State quickly followed suit. That means in California and Washington, you can't put food scraps and other compostable materials in your trash. It is clearly the wave of the future. 200 communities around the country have compost pickup programs. So there is a move afoot right now in Amherst to do this. Zero Waste Amherst has proposed reducing our trash by 40% simply by requiring universal curbside compost pickup. They proposed, starting with 1 to 4 family homes, simply providing 3 toters for each home instead of 2, food scraps and compostable materials that most people now put in their trash would instead go in the compost bin. And then they would be processed, that compost would be processed locally, probably at Martin's Farm in Greenfield. Making it universal ensures that trash would be reduced significantly. And changing from our very high-priced subscription services to a town contract would also save residents money, even with the extra services added in. And if Amherst does this, hopefully it would spread to other communities and become state law here too. Now, back to individual action that can speed up the great turning. So how about you? What can you do as an individual? Here are 8 impactful things you could do. You can vote for elected officials who are climate champions, who will prioritize working to implement climate solutions now, not who simply say they will work to create solutions by 2050. That's too easy to say. You can, if you drive a car, you can make your next one electric. If your default electric provider is Eversource or National Grid, you can enjoy membership in the new energy aggregation once it's launched, hopefully this year. You won't have to do anything to join. If you have another provider, you can join the aggregation by opting in at the end of your contract. We really need everyone to participate. You can support universal curbside compost pickup if you live in Amherst or elsewhere. You can support local food by joining the Common Share Food Co-op. It needs 1,000 members to launch and currently has 800. You can purchase reused items on Buy Nothing Amherst or at local thrift shops or estate sales. You can eat less beef and other types of meat and less dairy. If everyone did this, a huge emission source would be greatly reduced. And you can join local groups like Climate Action Now, Mothers Out Front, Local Energy Advocates, Zero Waste Amherst, or our own Green Sanctuary Committee, and financially support groups that are doing the good work, like the Conservation Law Foundation Zero Waste Project. If we did these 8 things and also got our policymakers to act, we can turn the Titanic in time.
We extinguish our chalice, but not, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us in our hearts until we are together again.
The closing words are a poem by Emily Dickinson, reminding us to be grateful. Nature is what we see. Nature is what we see. The hill, the afternoon, squirrel, eclipse, the bumblebee. Nay, nature is heaven. Nature is what we hear, the bobolink, the sea, thunder, the cricket. Nay, nature is harmony. Nature is what we know, yet have no art to say. So impotent our wisdom is to her simplicity.
The members of the Green Sanctuary Committee worked together to plan this service. Special thanks to Darcy Dumont for agreeing to be our special guest speaker.